Welcome to Dolphin Dive Daily, your go-to spot for everything Miami Dolphins. If you bleed aqua and orange, hit that subscribe button and join the pod. The Miami Dolphins find themselves at a fascinating and turbulent crossroads, one that not only reflects the state of the franchise, but also the often unforgiving business side of the NFL. Tyreek Hill, the superstar wide receiver who was supposed to be one of the pillars of the Dolphins' explosive offense, has suddenly become the center of swirling trade rumors that refuse to go away. It's not just idle chatter either. Multiple executives across the league, speaking anonymously, have suggested that Miami may have already missed the perfect window to capitalize on Hill's trade value. As the Dolphins stumbled to a 0-3 start heading into their Monday Night Football showdown against the equally desperate New York Jets, the whispers surrounding Hill have grown louder, casting a shadow over a season that is already teetering on the edge. What makes this situation particularly complex is the combination of Hill's undeniable on-field talent and the growing off-field baggage that has accompanied him in recent months. According to one executive who spoke to Jeff Howe of The Athletic, the Dolphins made a fundamental miscalculation by holding on to Hill through the 2024 offseason rather than striking a deal when his market was at its peak. That executive bluntly stated, "Tyreek's value for a trade was last year. The money, off-field accusations, and instability would scare me off. He is talented, but that is a huge gamble for any type of valuable pick. You need to do a lot of homework before you make that decision." Those words cut right to the heart of Miami's dilemma. While Hill remains an elite playmaker who can stretch defenses and change games in an instant, the risk attached to his name now outweighs the potential reward for many front offices. The off-field accusations referenced by the executive relate to allegations made earlier in September by Hill's estranged wife, accusations tied to domestic violence that Hill has adamantly denied. Importantly, he has not been charged with any crimes. But in the court of public opinion and in the cautious world of NFL ownership groups, even unproven allegations can be enough to send executives running. Teams are wary of tying themselves to players who may bring unwanted scrutiny or media storms, and that cloud now hovers firmly over Hill, regardless of whether or not anything comes from the claims. Adding to that tension is the perception of instability within the Dolphins' own building. Reports from September detailed culture issues under head coach Mike McDaniel, with Hill allegedly among the repeat offenders who racked up fines for being late to practices and team meetings throughout the 2024 season. This is not the type of behavior you want from one of your most prominent stars, particularly when you're trying to establish a winning, disciplined culture in the locker room. It sends a message to younger players that the rules may be flexible depending on your talent, and that is the exact opposite of what organizations with championship aspirations want to project. Hill himself hasn't helped matters with his actions on the field either. In January, during Miami's regular season finale, he infamously pulled himself out of the game and later told reporters that he was out. Though he eventually walked back those comments and issued an apology, the moment painted the picture of a player whose commitment was being questioned. Now, as the Dolphins find themselves drowning in a 0-3 hole to begin the 2025 campaign, these past incidents are being revisited as evidence that perhaps Hill is not the long-term solution in Miami after all. From a pure production standpoint, Hill has remained solid if not spectacular in the early weeks of the season. Over Miami's first 3 games, he has recorded 15 receptions for 198 yards and a touchdown. Those are respectable numbers, but they are not the type of explosive statistics that make teams overlook baggage or open their wallets in desperation. Combine that with the fact that Hill is now 31 years old, an age where wide receivers often begin to show decline, and it becomes clear why many around the league are cautious. When Howe surveyed 13 executives and coaches across the NFL about Hill's current value, the responses highlighted the dramatic shift in perception around him. 6 of them believed the Dolphins could get a third-round pick for his services, while others were more pessimistic, suggesting that Miami might only net a 4th or 5th rounder in return. Only one voice was optimistic enough to suggest the Dolphins could push for a second-round pick, and even then, the sentiment was that it would require the perfect buyer, a team willing to gamble on Hill's upside while overlooking the potential pitfalls. The 2 franchises most commonly linked to Hill in September have been the Kansas City Chiefs, his former team, and the Pittsburgh Steelers, both of whom could use a dynamic weapon on the outside. For Kansas City, a reunion would be enticing, given Patrick Mahomes' familiarity with Hill and the Chiefs' occasional struggles to stretch the field without him. For Pittsburgh, it would be an attempt to supercharge an offense that has looked pedestrian at times. But again, even if interest exists, the compensation Miami could realistically expect seems unlikely to justify moving on from a player of Hill's caliber, especially so early in the season. This brings us back to the Dolphins themselves, who are in a precarious position. Sitting at 0-3, their season feels like it could spiral quickly, but the schedule provides a glimmer of hope. After facing the winless Jets at home on Monday Night Football, Miami will travel to face the struggling Carolina Panthers, who are coming off a humiliating blowout loss to the New England Patriots. On paper, those are two winnable games, and if the Dolphins can string together back-to-back victories, they could silence at least some of the noise surrounding a potential Hill trade. Winning cures everything in the NFL, or at least masks deeper issues for a time. The Dolphins' front office, however, has to be realistic about its long-term outlook. Do they hold on to Hill, hoping he can help turn the season around and lead Miami back into contention? Or do they cut their losses, acknowledge that the player's value is depreciating by the day, and try to salvage what they can before it's too late? It's a brutal calculation, one made harder by the fact that Hill is still immensely popular with many fans who see him as the face of the offense. Trading him now would be a public relations nightmare, unless it came with a clear plan and substantial return. In truth, there may not be a perfect solution. Hill's talent is undeniable, but the accumulation of off-field headlines, fines, and questionable commitment moments have chipped away at the aura that once surrounded him. He is no longer the electric star who commanded the type of trade package Miami once gave up to acquire him. Now, he is an asset whose value has peaked and is heading downward, a player who could still deliver highlight reel plays, but whose overall impact on a franchise is murkier. For now, all eyes turn to Monday night against the Jets. If Miami can't secure a win and falls to 0-4, the trade speculation will intensify, and the front office may have no choice but to start seriously fielding offers. If Hill is productive but the Dolphins still lose, that paradox will only deepen. Is it worth keeping an aging star on a sinking ship, or is it better to rip off the bandage and begin retooling? Conversely, if Miami turns things around with Hill at the forefront, they may find themselves clinging to him once more, even if logic suggests his long-term value is slipping away. One thing is certain: the Dolphins' decision on Tyreek Hill will be remembered as a defining moment for this era of the franchise. Whether they keep him and push forward or decide to part ways and begin a new chapter, it will signal what kind of organization they want to be. Do they prioritize short-term flashes of brilliance, or do they take the cold, hard road of building sustainably for the future? Fans, analysts, and executives alike will be watching closely, because whatever choice Miami makes with Tyreek Hill will reverberate far beyond just one season. Still with us? Then show some love. Hit that like button and let us know in the comments. What's your take on the Fins this week? Locker rooms are usually places of camaraderie, sweat, and strategy, a sort of sacred ground where players unite under the banner of one team, sharing victories and losses alike. But what's been quietly bubbling beneath the fluorescent lights and the echoing clatter of cleats on tiled floors in Miami Dolphins facilities seems anything but united. Sources close to the team have started whispering about tension, about an unseen fracture that might be threatening to disrupt the very fabric of what had, until recently, been considered a harmonious locker room. At the center of the storm? None other than star wide receiver Tyreek Hill and the team's emerging talent, Jalen Waddle. The pair, often seen flashing smiles on the sidelines, have apparently developed a competitive rivalry that insiders describe as tinged with personal friction. It's the kind of situation that doesn't make headlines at first glance, but carries the potential to unravel game plans, affect morale, and even influence the Dolphins' trajectory in what promises to be a defining season. The murmurs started innocuously, with teammates noting a subtle change in body language during practice. Where once Tyreek and Waddle might have shared lighthearted banter or celebrated each other's catches, now there are reports of tense silences and carefully measured interactions. Coaches have allegedly noticed the shift too, observing that plays involving both players sometimes feature less than perfect synchronization. Sources say that it isn't just normal competition. It's something more nuanced, an undercurrent of frustration that both players have yet to publicly acknowledge. While neither has spoken openly to the media about any disagreement, insiders insist that the locker room atmosphere has definitely felt different over the past few weeks, with players choosing sides subtly, in ways that might seem innocent but actually reveal a deeper, more strategic alignment within the squad. The roots of the friction are speculative, but rumors suggest that part of it stems from a perceived hierarchy on the team. Tyreek Hill, a veteran and multiple-time Pro Bowler, is seen as a cornerstone of the Dolphins' offensive strategy, and his influence extends both on and off the field. Waddle, younger and full of raw talent, has been breaking records, turning heads, and arguably challenging the established pecking order in Miami's receiving corps. That dynamic, veteran pride versus rising talent, is classic in professional sports. Yet when it plays out in a locker room as public and scrutinized as the Dolphins, it can morph into something more dramatic than either player intended. Coaches are said to be walking a tightrope, trying to balance praise and playtime in a way that keeps both athletes motivated while preventing simmering tension from boiling over. Sources close to team management describe a delicate dance behind the scenes. Private meetings, one-on-one coaching sessions, and strategy discussions in quiet rooms have all been part of an attempt to keep the situation from spilling into public view. The concern isn't just about personal relationships, it's about the ripple effect. A fractured dynamic between two primary playmakers could influence snap counts, target distribution, and even the chemistry with the quarterback. The Dolphins' front office is reportedly monitoring every interaction, analyzing whether subtle signs, like a slight delay in celebrating a touchdown, a tense exchange of glances, or even social media activity, might indicate a worsening rift. It's a scenario that insiders compare to a powder keg. No single incident might trigger an explosion, but a combination of small tensions, repeated over time, could dramatically shift the locker room's equilibrium. Interestingly, some teammates seem caught in the middle, trying to mediate without taking sides. Friends and fellow players have been observed stepping in, suggesting plays, creating bonding exercises, and encouraging collaboration during drills. Yet, even these interventions carry weight. Some sources suggest that well-intentioned attempts at reconciliation sometimes create awkward moments, highlighting the underlying discomfort rather than alleviating it. Veteran players are described as treading lightly, wary of appearing to favor one athlete over the other, while newer members of the team may be quietly observing, deciding where their loyalties lie, and trying to navigate a space that is becoming increasingly charged with subtle tension. The drama, however, isn't confined to the practice field. Observers note that during team meetings, there are occasional moments of visible unease when both Hill and Waddle are involved in discussions about routes, plays, or offensive strategy. Some describe a polite but stiff form of disagreement, where the room collectively holds its breath, unsure whether the situation will escalate into a direct confrontation or remain a quiet, simmering rivalry. Sources insist that the coaching staff is acutely aware of every nuance, from body language to tone, and is actively working to maintain equilibrium while ensuring that competitive energy translates into productive performance on game day rather than distraction off the field. Social media, of course, has been fertile ground for speculation. Fans and commentators, sensing shifts in interaction patterns and subtle differences in post-game interviews, have begun to construct narratives of their own. While Tyreek Hill continues to post charismatic, motivational content, and Waddle shares highlights of his record-breaking catches, eagle-eyed followers are dissecting emojis, captions, and timing, trying to extract hidden meaning. Whether these observations are accurate or merely a reflection of fan obsession is unclear, but the public narrative now mirrors the whispers in the locker room. There is something brewing in Miami, something more personal than tactical, something that could define the Dolphins' identity in the weeks and months to come. It's also worth noting that both players, despite these reported tensions, remain consummate professionals. On the field, they perform at levels that continue to impress even the harshest critics. Yet the duality of public excellence and private friction creates a compelling, almost cinematic tension. Coaches, analysts, and insiders alike recognize that the storyline, rivalry, respect, and possible reconciliation is as much a part of sports as touchdowns and statistics. There is anticipation, perhaps even apprehension, about how this dynamic will unfold. Will it push both players to new heights through competition, or will the underlying rift undermine cohesion and morale? That question remains unanswered, but it is a question that echoes through every hallway, every practice, and every game day preparation at the Dolphins headquarters. Rumors also suggest that the locker room divide could influence trade talks or contract negotiations in the future. While nothing concrete has been confirmed, executives are reportedly keen to understand the interpersonal dynamics between key players, recognizing that chemistry, or the lack thereof, can have financial and strategic consequences. The notion of a rift between two high-profile wide receivers isn't just a storyline for sports gossip. It's a strategic consideration for management, a factor that could affect play calling, media strategy, and even the franchise's broader approach to building a winning team. For now, the Dolphins appear to be in damage control mode, striving to maintain focus on the season while managing a situation that could easily spiral if not handled delicately. That's a wrap for today's dive. If you're loving the content, share it with a fellow Dolphins fan, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a splash. Fins up.